Floppy Waffle 69 here, and for today's video, we are going to be looking at our next ship in the line or down the line series, going to the USS Montana, which is the Tier 8 USN battleship, the USS North Carolina. So right off the get-go, I have to say the NC, for me, isn't a bad battleship. Yep, that's what I'm going to say. It just isn't a bad battleship. But on the contrary, it might be filling the role of this isn't a bad battleship or the title I'm giving it, but I do think this thing is severely power crept, and there are just flat out better battleships at this tier, at Tier 8. Tier 8's competitive battleship. Tier 8 is a competitive tier for battleships. That is just a fact. We know that. But why would you on earth would you play the NC other than to grind past it to progress to the Iowa and eventually to the Montana? Well, that's a very good question, and hopefully I can answer that in simplest terms. I guess you're looking for a stealthier battleship that has 406s, so it has that overmatch potential. But it really isn't a sniping battleship, because you're going to see when I talk about the shells and just how floated they are, this ship takes that to the extreme. Like we always do, we're going to dig around under the hood here, kind of talk about the NC, kind of what she's good at, what she's not good at, go over some soft stats, and eventually I'll show you some gameplay on her. But right off the get-go, I would say that this ship is a breath of fresh air from coming from the New Mexico and the Colorado to this. But we're not quite at where we want to be in regards of other battleships. You know, I've heard a lot of people say this is the quintessential battleship that'll teach you how to play other battleships. And while I don't necessarily disagree with that comment, I do think there are just better battleships that will teach you about battleships. And one battleship tech line that I do think is a very, very good battleship, more so for beginners. And again, this is my opinion, just kind of what I wish I would have known, would be the Soviet BBs. Now, you're probably saying, you know, Waffle, why the fuck would you say that? That thing has a massive citadel. You have to get in close and brawl, and to be reliable with those guns. Like, what are you thinking? Well, one, I think it's teaching you about how to angle your armor very well. I think you have extremely effective armor on those ships with a massive citadel, of course, against you. But if angled effectively, that ship or those ships in general will teach you how to angle your vessel and know if you're showing too much, you'll get punished, right? Again, the Kremlin with its special armor scheme, once I get to that tech tree or whatever, we'll talk about that, but I don't want to get too much into it. Just take it for face value for right now. The second reason is, yes, is encouraging a more aggressive playstyle, and I think that is good in multiple ways. One, not every battleship in this game is meant to be sitting back in the way back and just lobbing shells downrange. I think it's a little bit more than that. And one thing it teaches you is how to tank effectively for your team. The more damage that you can absorb and inevitably heal back as you have the armor and heal is less damage being dealt to your destroyers, to your cruisers with radar, or, just cruisers in general. And you're acting as a distraction. And ships have to honor your guns, right? So I think we can all agree that coming from those standpoints that I'm saying, or those, specific viewpoints, I think we can all agree, like, yeah, I guess I can see that to some degree. So that's just my opinion. Now, I think the other also really good line to learn battleships a little bit more is the Montana line. And that's why I'm covering it, because not only I think it's one of the most popular lines, but it also is a good line to help teach beginners. And that's kind of what I'm doing with the down the line series. I'm trying to pick lines that I think are really good introductory lines for people to play. Like we covered the Zhao line first. Now we're doing the Montana, and eventually I'll cover other lines for destroyer, aircraft carrier, and submarine as well. As I dabble in all, even though I'm more of a surface ship in regards of, cruiser, battleship, destroyer, than I am more CB and sub, but I digress. So a couple ships that I'm going to compare while I'm going over the stats, a couple ships I'm going to compare the North Carolina to is the Colorado, obviously, because we're coming up from the Colorado, so you kind of want to see what we're gaining, right? And the other ship that I think kind of plays not similar, but it's kind of promoting that more aggressive play style that is a USN battleship is the Massachusetts. Different play styles for sure. One is more secondary brawling focused. One is more of a hybrid, like middle range battleship, support battleship. So you'll see what I'm talking about when I eventually cover that. But I think it's a really good, kind of, hey, like this is what other, maybe something that's similar. Maybe something even better for me to cover would have been like the Alabama. That's another very good option. That's another, sister ship to the Massachusetts. And actually, now that I'm thinking about it, that might be the better ship, just because that's more. We can agree it's not more. The Massachusetts is pretty aggressive and it's very, very strong. No longer really in the game. You can only gamble for it through Insana crates and through the Black Friday event. So I think the Alabama, as it is a premium ship as well, we can kind of compare it to the NC as well. So, all right. So like we do, let's go on and look at the armor first off. So you're finally getting that 32 millimeter nose and that 32 millimeter ass, and your deck plating is 38 millimeters. Now, with the 38 millimeters, that is a kind of an important threshold in regards of heavy cruisers with high explosive. I believe they can, well, some cruisers especially can penetrate that reliably with their 38 millimeters of deck. Like the Henry with the 240s, the Goliath, like certain ships can pen that. And I want to just double check. Let me just double check for you guys, because I don't want to provide false statistics, everyone here, or anyone here, excuse me. So with the HE shells, yeah, they can penetrate 59 millimeters of armor, and that's just the Goliath. So like your standard cruiser, like for example, what we've already covered, that being the Zao, right? That thing has an HE penetration of 34 millimeters, so can't just quite pen that. Again, though, with IFHE, not that you would take that on that ship, it's a decent threshold to understand. But the 32 millimeters now is a important threshold in regards of the forend plating and the ass here, as because you have certain battleship caliber guns that are just so massive, as we all know, the famous Yamato, Shikishima, and Incomparable, that they will just go right through your nose. And this thing, in regards when it goes right through your nose, has a massive citadel that can be punished. So there's not, so it's I'd say with overmatching battleships, it's fairly easy to citadel this thing through the nose. So we're going to strip away the layers here of the North Carolina, and you can see we have our waterline citadel, which in my opinion is sort of deceiving, as these things are very easy to citadel. I don't have any issues citadeling North Carolina, Iowa, or Montana. Personally, that's just my opinion. Maybe you guys do, I don't know, but this thing, usually if it's caught broadside on, is taking citadels. And even when you're angled just enough, because we have a lot of ships that can, just the penetration is so high, like even if you're angled just enough and you aim your shell specifically, in a certain angle where, hey, it's not going to auto ricochet, I still find myself getting citadels, like with big enough shell calibers. So this thing will 100% eat citadels, like it's nobody's business. And I believe, looking through it as well, 305 millimeters of armor you have to cut through. That's not incredibly hard to score citadel ribbons through as well with the penetration. So this thing it has armor, but it's sacrificing, I believe, a little bit coming from the Colorado in regards to the broadside, but it gains some speed. And we'll talk about that later on as we progress through as well. Survivability, you're coming in at 66,000 HP, which if we are comparing to the other, oh my gosh, why is my thing not working here? If we're comparing to the other battleships that I have on this list, actually you're the highest one between the Colorado's 59, obviously 1,300, and the Alabama with 63,300. So not bad. I have to double check where you rank with the other Tier 8 battleships. All I can imagine is you're kind of middle of the road would be what I would guess with the North Carolina. Torpedo protection of 19. Now, that is very, very bad. Okay, that's not good. Especially when we're looking at the Colorado having 37, which I thought was already kind of mammoth okay, but it's nothing to write home about. But then you have the Alabama's God tier at 49%, which is awesome. So again, you're sacrificing armor, which torpedo protection is included in that, in order to pick up that speed. So thank God we finally have a battleship faster than 21, 22 knots, which we'll cover here in a bit. Now the artillery setup, you're having the 3x3 finally of 406 millimeter guns, not the 2x4s, and obviously not the 4x4 or 4x3 what is it, the 356s on the New Mexico. So finally 406s as well. Like you have in the Colorado, we have the 3x3 setup. So 2/3 of your firepower is concentrated in the front, which is good for mitigation of damage. And I'll show the gun firing angles on here as well, which arguably are okay. Like I'm not gonna, they're not gonna win too many awards here, but like it's reasonable. I can work with this, right? You should be able to as well. Reload time 30 seconds. Minimum time switching. 180-degree turn time, which is 39.1. Okay, it's not bad. Just above that standard 30 that every battleship seems to have. And now the dispersion. The dispersion I want to talk about a bit with her. She is a little bit different in regards of that. I believe, first of all, before I talk about her dispersion, I guess it's important to note about her maximum range, which is 23.3 kilometers. That is more than enough range. So even if you have the spotter, which again, that's for those long looping shots over the islands or cross-map claps, or the carrier that's all the way in the back not moving, like those kind of things, is why I carry the spotter, not the fighter. The fighter is basically useless. So I will always pick the spotter, and hopefully you do too. You just get more use out of it, right? But with the 23-kilometer range, you have a horizontal dispersion of 290 meters and vertical dispersion of 173. Also, to write note or take note about is the sigma at 2.05. Better than what you're going to be seeing here at the with the other battleships at this that I'm comparing it to. The Colorado has obviously 2.0, and I told you that was kind of fishy. I'm not 100% sure about that one. Felt very RNG based. And then the Alabama coming in at the 1.9 sigma. So, I mean, the North Carolina sharing the same sigma as the Zhao, for example. Again, I'm going to throw that one in there. Interesting, right? The 2.05 sigma. This battleship is fairly accurate. I will definitely give it that, but it's not as accurate as you think it is because it can't slot in mod 3, the aiming systems mod, where other battleships can. Like it might have a better starting off base sigma and dispersion, but other battleships rival it just because they can take that, and this one can't. And obviously we know why, because at 9 and 10 they get that that special 6-slot artillery upgrade, which we'll cover that in the later videos that precede this one. Quick to touch note on the high explosive with 5,700 damage and a 36-second fire chance, giving us a fires per minute of 6.5. Again, there are times you will find yourself shooting HE. This is why I do recommend the expert loader skill on this battleship. And that just comes down mainly to if you need to land those shells at decent ranges, or if the destroyers are coming flying around the corner to YOLO you, and we all have that happen to us. You have the ability to just do, chance to set a fire and just do some raw, consistent damage rather than, really hope that your AP does really good damage. It's just the more consistent ammo type. And I wish it wasn't the case, but it is. It just flat out is. That being said, I don't expect you to be shooting HE in this thing 100% of the time. That's just not what you want to be doing in this thing, because that's missing the point of North Carolina and missing the point of, I would say 99% of the battleships out there, maybe 90% of the battleships out there. So the AP on this thing is definitely going to be your bread and butter. AA defenses. Now you saw I take the one commander skill that buffs my flat count and my AA. Maybe it also does the sector time. I'm not 100% sure. This thing actually has potent AA. So this is our first American battleship in the tech tree going down to Montana that actually has usable AA. My div mate and my clan mates have noticed this. I've obviously experienced this multiple times. This thing is especially when you're fighting tier 8 carriers and lower, so that's also tier 6s, this thing will shred. It'll absolutely shred. Can they still get a strike off? Absolutely. I'm not saying, it's kind of the way AA systems are designed, especially because it doesn't have defensive AA fire. But they will definitely pay a price coming to strike you with that continuous damage of 379, and that's your short range of 308, and your firing range, I believe your mid-range of 3.15 with the 172 damage, and then obviously your long range. No, I read that wrong. Your mid-range is 389, and then your long range is 172. So your AA long range starts up at 5.8 meters. So yeah, the AA is definitely potent. I've noticed for sure that if I have a squadron, let's say I have 6 planes, I'm shooting down at a bare minimum 2 planes before that, and that's without the, of course, if they have a heal, like I don't know, it depends. It also depends on the skill level of the CV as if they're going to fly around my flak. But I do notice that I do shoot down about 1 to 2 planes before that strike even gets off, which is great. And then by the time the strike's off, if they don't recall their plane, they try to circle around and continue it. I'm definitely shredding the 3, 4, 5. It's awesome. It's great. Finally, we have a United States battleship that has it. Because this is what these things were known for back in the day was, hey, if you want this line, you could definitely, I wouldn't say be immune, but you can definitely defend yourself more so against carrier strikes. So that's always good to see. Maneuverability, 27.5 knots, and I want to double check. I don't think I have my flags on or anything. Yeah, so you have 27.5 knots with a rudder shift time of 15.2 and a turning circle radius of 760 meters. Obviously, with the 15.2, I'm taking the mod to buff it. Is actually not what I would recommend. It's weird. I'd actually recommend taking the damage control systems mod just because we're in an age where the HE is more prevalent. Obviously with torpedoes, submarines, right? I just believe that you're probably going to get more out of your damage control systems mod 2 there than you are going to be out of your rudder shift. If you rely more on active maneuvering, and not just sitting on bow tanking, or you're a little bit more experienced and you can position your battleship accordingly, and not try to overextend or find yourself in really bad situations. Yeah, this rudder shift has its usefulness. It allows you to swivel back and forth to get your turrets online and angle back for sure. You could go either way. I would say I'm more 60-40 on damage control than I am rudder shift. I just currently have rudder shift. I've tried both per se, and I think the more consistent build that you're going to get more out of is running the damage control systems mod 2, I believe, in that 4th slot right here. So, which is going to obviously help with your flood and fire recovery time. So, going into your concealment, 13.7, which is actually not true because I take the concealment module. It is coming in at 15.19, which with the concealment upgrade is 13.7, and with your commander on it, you have 12.3, which is outstanding for a battleship. This is great. Obviously, we have other battleships that have lower, like the Tennessee, I believe, has like 11.7, if I'm not mistaken. Reasonably well, really well concealed, and that's great because that's going to allow us to get in more advantageous positions to go ahead and support our allies, especially in the beginning of the map. Again, with submarines, with aircraft carriers, this gets nullified a bit, especially with aircraft carriers, it gets nullified a lot, and you're going to have to change the way you play the game. But with no CVs or no subs, you can be a little bit cheeky with that, and get into positions, not reasonably fast, but get in positions where you can go ahead and utilize that speed, not speed, but that concealment to your advantage, basically. All right, so here we are. We're done with the whole soft look at the stats and everything about the ship. So my initial takes here before I go and show you the game is, I enjoyed the North Carolina playing her. I think she's a decently okay-ish battleship. Definitely a big upgrade from what we previously had to endure. And it's definitely a breath of fresh air. That's kind of my little saying I like with the North Carolina. She can be effective. But she has been severely hindered in that ability just because the game's expanding, the game's growing. Power creep is just a thing that's going to happen, sadly. But she can still be a very good choice and a viable choice as well. The last thing I did want to talk about with her before I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, and I guess I could talk about this in game too, but we'll talk about this right now, is the AP and HE, kind of the speed of the shells getting downrange. The initial speed when the shells are coming out of the gun barrel is 701 meters a second. Compare that to the Colorado's 768. You see where I'm kind of going with this? And if we want to show like another battleship that's at the same tier as well, like let's go with the Vladivostok, that's 793 meters a second. These are very, very slow shells. And the drag coefficient is 0.352 with a flight time you're looking at 7.2 seconds. Not a high impact speed either, coming at 540 meters a second, and your impact angle is 10.3 degrees. These are going up, touching the moon, and coming down, so to speak. This is why I don't recommend playing at anywhere probably or past 16 kilometers with this thing because you cannot reliably land your shells. You're going to have to put yourself in situations where A, around allies, and B, close enough to the target where you can at least consistently land your shells, which again is going to be tricky with you. I cannot stress this part enough, and hopefully the gameplay and footage I show to you guys will help highlight and emphasize that to you. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get on into the replay for you guys. Now here we are in battle here, ladies and gentlemen, and of course, I don't know why the replay is not showing that to you, but the helms are being, God damn it, I definitely screwed that up, but the helm is being manned by none other than Optimus Prime here on our, no, I'm kidding, the North Carolina. So the North Carolina, this is actually a really good battle to highlight for you guys because I not only fight surface ships, but I'm also fighting submarines and aircraft carriers. So it kind of gives you that full rounded, like kind of what this thing can do while it is top tier. Now, again, take that with a pinch of salt. I am top tier. I kind of wanted to find a game that I was kind of middle, like against tier 9s and tier 7s, kind of in the middle of the pack there, like I usually do. But I played this game and I'm like, yep, this is the one. So. Anyways, we hopefully can highlight some of the pros of this ship while also highlighting some of the cons. Kind of the big thing that I've noticed that a lot of people struggle with this ship is the positioning of this vessel. I feel like either they're too far back where their accuracy is so it's because the shell velocity, their accuracy isn't very good, so they're not landing shells on target, and they're also not tanking for their team. So they're not doing anything, basically. They're just sailing around, which I understand because if this thing overextends, this thing will 100% get melted. So you really need to find that kind of sweet spot, middle ground there where this thing can really, be in its element. But yeah, the one thing, and then again, with that being said, on the contrary, when I see people struggle with this thing is they're way too aggressive in this thing as well because they're probably so frustrated with the artillery on this thing with the shells that they want to make sure they get the most out of their salvos and they get really in close. And this thing really doesn't benefit from that either, just because the armor is very lackluster. Yes, you do retain that 18.5% kind of like improved American heal we've had throughout the line, but it's still not going to be enough, as I believe it just has that standard reload time in regard to like cooldown before you can use it again, but I'm not 100% sure on that. But yeah, obviously, first thing we're doing is we wanted to come over to this flank because our destroyer was over here. We're like, hey, we're going to support our destroyer, and our ship's over here. Being a top-tier battleship, I want to make sure I can do all that I can. But of course, my destroyer says "C'est la vie" and decides to, I guess, run to the middle of the map. I understand the GJ marker is not an easy ship to play, but also completely abandoning a flank while you also have, 4 or 5 ships here plus a sub. Not really the best of calls by that guy, but I understand. That being said, I see that they have a couple battleships making more of a middle kind of run here, middle push. So I want to make sure that I can support my destroyer as much as I can here before I fully commit to this flank with the Byron and Lizout. So as you see, this thing can hit hard, and it will continuously hit hard. I believe here on the Byron we get like about a 12,000 damaging salvo almost. This thing is definitely, it can definitely pump out the damage in regards of its artillery. That being said, though, it can't really take much damage, and you do notice that. And the speed is very nice. Obviously, I do run that, was that Swift and Silence or whatever the skill that you can, when you're undetected, you can obviously get improved like 10% speed increase, just for obvious reasons to make sure I can get in position faster. But it is nice to finally be able to achieve 27, 28 knots or higher instead of the standard, 22, 21 knots that we're so used to by playing this line since the, essentially the South Carolina, but from where these videos started, the New York. So good thing I didn't push around there, as we have the Akazuki and the Ramiat shooting HE from us. And you can already see that our ship is beginning to melt. So we want to make sure that we tuck ourselves back into cover so that we can recharge a little bit there while we're still keeping our guns active and shooting at the Byron, who is just full setting up the middle of the map in a tier 8 carrier game. Kind of interesting. I guess he wants to just rip the band-aid off. So Recognizing that the Poltava here is on our flank, so we're going to start angling accordingly while we're kind of pointing our nose at the Bayern, and we're going to start shooting the Poltava to try to do as much help as we can to our U-69 there and our ships on this flank. Again, though, we're at 16 kilometers, so this is right at like where I would be at max. What I'd recommend, don't exceed this in regards of engagements. And you're going to see that the shells, that salvo wasn't terrible, but the salvos, it's going to be harder and harder to hit the target once he gets out of that range. Just because of, again, with the impact angle, the initial shell speed coming out of the guns, it's all contributing to this kind of awkward, floaty battleship turret or shell type that is quite frustrating to play at times. But that being said, when you do find yourself against a battle tanking cruiser that you can obviously overmatch, that Krupp really does hit hard. And I wonder if it's because of the impact angle kind of being able to overmatch maybe the top of the nose coming down in and going right into the Citadel, because I do find myself getting a lot more frontal sits with the North Carolina, Iowa, Montana line, just because it has that special kind of angle that it hits on ships downrange. So obviously the submarine is spotted. He's just outside my ASW range, so we're going to drop anyways. Maybe we'll be lucky enough and he gets in the ASW range as well. Again, just making sure that I angle my ship accordingly to the Poltava, while also recognizing that the Bayern was kind of middle of the map, but he obviously goes down. So now we can kind of solely focus on this Poltava a little bit here and see if we can help our sub. But obviously our sub goes down, which is rather unfortunate. One thing I would like to do, one thing I could really advise in this thing is hanging around your allies. I find a lot of NC players really, battleships in general, but especially the NC, really try to go off on their own. You really have to be cognizant of where you are positioning your vessel in accordance to your allies. I would say very rarely, unless you really want to put yourself in a bad position, very rarely do you want to find yourself, or what I consider a favorable position, if there are more enemies in your flank or your area than there are allied ships. I think you're rather at a disadvantage at that point, even in a top tier game. So I'm really trying to remain close to my allied ships, not only to support them with my anti-aircraft fire, but also tank for them a little bit and be that kind of big target that everybody wants to shoot, which the Rymat is doing. So, prime example, I have the heel, I have the armor. I don't mind taking those shells for my Bellari's or whatever, the Spanish tier 6 cruiser. So again, I want the Poltava to shoot me and not my cruiser buddy here. Again, I have the armor, I have the heel. It's just better. So better if I take the brunt of the assault. But yeah, as you're going to see, eventually the Saipan will have us in his sights, and you can definitely see what I talked about with the AA being rather potent on this vessel. And that's, again, if you take, even without taking the captain skill, I think it's the tier 2 captain skill, or was it the tier 3? I'm not 100% sure. The one that increases your flak on battleships as well, your flak count by 1. This ship can really turn into a very potent anti-aircraft platform. And I've noticed that. Even when I'm playing a CV, a tier 8 CV, and I'm going against North Carolina, I'm very aware of what they can do, and I really try to avoid their AA aura for as long as I can until I'm physically, finding myself having to go through their AA or having to strike them, because I know they will send a lot of my planes. He will shoot down a lot of my plane, so you do have to be aware of that. But yeah. As we slowly start killing one ship after another, we're going to start closing the distance to some degree. Again, I think I have 39.1 second 180-degree turret time. So again, not a brawler by any means, but I definitely can only increase my likelihood of landing my shells where I want them to hit by closing the distance to a safe degree. I don't want to be in brawling range of this Poltava, but definitely within the 10-kilometer range, 12-kilometer range is kind of the sweet spot. Obviously, we're dealing with the submarine who is around here. So again, with that being said, submarines love using their white indicators. Make sure you swivel a lot, just as if you're dealing with an enemy destroyer. You want to make sure you can throw off their torpedo strikes and do what you can to actively maneuver. You definitely are harder to get a harder ship and a harder target to hit while you're actively maneuvering. That's for sure. So trying to kind of land my shells in the schnoz of the Poltava. He is slightly angled, which I do. He has some armor. I can overmatch the majority of his nose. He has some slightly like belt armor down there, going in towards his nose as well. But if he showed me just enough, I might be able to squeak in a Citadel. So that's kind of where I'm firing. And if not, then I'm landing on his nose in general, and I'm getting those full pens, which is nice. So, I mean, 13,000 damage, I can't complain. But I do have to be careful. Well, I am exposing my third turret. That is definitely opening me up enough to eat citadels, so I definitely have to be careful with that. So we have a battleship targeting us, we have a submarine shooting torpedoes at us, and now we are about ready to have the enemy aircraft carrier bring his dive bombers in on us as well. Again, that's the armor of the Poltava I was talking about. You have to be careful, so he's doing a good job angling. And here come the enemy aircraft, which the Saipan having tier 10 aircraft, which is a great example to show you kind of what this thing can do. I mean, that's 4 planes shot down right before the strike even happened. Actually, 6 make that. So it doesn't even look like he got the strike off. So that is awesome. The definitely potent anti-aircraft fire this thing can unleash. So definitely make sure you take use of that. And again, when you're in tier 10 too, it can shoot down a couple, but again, it's just going to be less and less because you're dealing with a whole other level of aircraft carriers. So you have to be careful with that. Blind dropping ASW, kind of predicting where he'd be. We were lucky enough to get a splash hit. Also letting us know, giving us that information that he is indeed right where we think he is. Oil splash pops up. He's going to try to fire his back too. We're switching to HE, getting ready to shoot him, but I believe he goes down anyways to our flood. But though his torpedoes didn't travel the 3 kilometers in order to fully do the max damage for them, we only take, maybe a flood and very minimal damage, which is very nice. So, but yeah, this is pretty much summing up the game here. I mean, it's definitely a win for the guys or the fellows here. Kind of, I guess we're just going to see, hey, where's the aircraft carrier, and see if we get lucky enough. Maybe he'll be right here. I don't know. And we'll just shoot out as many planes as possible in the meantime. Sure enough, we are lucky enough. He is full sailing it into us, which is great. Autopilot definitely working as intended there. So we're hopefully going to be able to punish this guy. Picking up Confederate and high caliber on the way. Already up to around 39,000, 40,000 plane damage and climbing. So again, emphasizing the AA power of the ship. Not the strongest AA battleship, that's for sure. Obviously, some BBs with defensive AA fire just going to outshine it just because of that passive bonus. But like the raw damage I think can put up is really, really nice. So, as you're seeing. Secondaries, I know I forgot to mention them in the port screen view. They're there. I mean, maybe the occasional fire. They're really not going to be able to do much, but you do have them, which again is you're not going to complain. They're definitely not Massachusetts level or West Virginia 44, but you know, what the hell. Always nice to sink an enemy aircraft carrier, which is great. And also shoot down his last plane, which is huge. Bringing our grand total up to 28, right? Or the 30? Yeah, 30 planes shot down. So just, 3 or 5 shy of getting the A defense expert. Too bad I wasn't able to get that for you guys to kind of put the final nail in the coffin in my argument saying this thing's AA is pretty potent. And then I believe with the Maya all the way at J, 4 on there on the J line, we're going to lob shells in case, maybe we'll get the crack on the Lucky Citadel. But again, with this thing's shell velocity, I'm leading by like 15, 20 clicks. So all I have to do is maneuver just ever so slightly, and there's no way in hell these shells are going to land. So basically, hope this was a good example for you guys. I know I'm blabbering on and talking about nonsense half the time, but hopefully in the background, if you're watching the gameplay or the raw footage, you can kind of see what this thing is capable of doing. Again, like I consider myself a decently good player at the game. I mean, nothing, insane or whatnot, but, I do believe that the vast majority of players can achieve this. And that's kind of my main premise by making these videos. I want to let, not only share my builds that have worked for me, that maybe not be the most like competitive builds, but they are super fun. And I get good results in these ships overall. So hopefully they do help you guys if you are choosing to do this. But again, it's just, maybe, just an opinion-based thing, right? If it works for me, it doesn't work for you. If you disagree with me, that's absolutely fine. I kind of hope we have that discussion in that disagreement in regards of that, and we can have that debate about what's good or what's not. I mean, even some of the things I do, even at tier 10, a lot of people are like, why are you specking into that? That's stupid. I'm like, I'm telling you, I don't know what it is, but this works for me. I've tried this build that you're saying doesn't really work for me, but this does. That's very common for me, so that's why I'm putting my builds out there, just so everyone can hopefully see it. Again, if I can help anyone or everyone achieve 5% better games, I mean, hey, that's enough for me. Like, you know what I mean? It's all about having fun. What you're doing. I mean, we've all been a part of those sessions when you play 5 to 10 games and you lose every single game. I mean, that's certainly not fun either. So anything that can help, you know, make the game a little bit more fun for us is, that's kind of why I enjoy doing what I do. I'm definitely not a big channel like a lot of these other guys, but I still figured I'd shoot my shot and put it out there. So then maybe one day it can help somebody that stumbles across these videos. So I believe we do cap them out. I don't think we kill the Maya here. Again, my salmon. People are always more vocal when they're going to win the game, right? Especially in a situation like this, and chirp the guy, but whatever. Each to their own. But yes, we do end up achieving victory in this game, and I believe we do get ranked as like an expert in like the top 1% or whatever it is. I know it doesn't show that in the replay, but we did end up getting the letter E. It's kind of surprising me that a game like this with 154,000 damage and a base XP score, what do we get here? 2,300 actually was an E for the North Carolina. So that does show me that I think the vast majority of North Carolina players, because it is a very popular ship, let's be honest, we see this ship all over the place, aren't achieving the best results in her. And I think that with a lot of, especially my content when it comes to like the North Carolina here of this video, will hopefully help you understand how to play her a little bit better. This ship, obviously, when you get thrown into tier 9 and tier 10 games, she is going to struggle a bit, as do all ships. You're just going to have to play smarter, not harder, and outthink your opponents. It's completely possible. It's totally doable. And you can do it. So hopefully this review helps you guys a little bit more to help you guys out. So final take on the North Carolina here. I do think she is a capable battleship. In my opinion, she is just an okay battleship. I wouldn't go around and say she's the quintessential tier 8 BB for learning the game or learning how to play battleships. I wouldn't go as far as saying that. Like I already told you my opinion in the beginning of the video. But I would say that she is a fun little tier 8 boat. Competitive wise, I think she has her moments. Again, there's just better battleships that are going to outclass you. And that's when you're going to have to try to outplay them. Obviously, I didn't show or showcase anything in this video where I had to load HE. But again, there are times you're going to have to do that. And again, you as the captain will have to make that decision when to do that. So anyways, guys, I'll catch you all next time. Hope you all enjoyed the video. And yeah, have a good one. Peace.